Now we're going to talk about the muscles of the front of the torso. So we need some bones. So we have this egg-like shape to represent the rib cage, and we need a pelvis. So think of the pelvis as a vessel, right? It contains organs. So something like a bowl could kind of help you figure out the placement. So the rim of the bowl is the iliac crest, right? So this that outer rim, and then the bottom of the bowl is that ischium with the pubic arch in the middle, a little off center. Okay, so the parts of the rib cage that we should know are the sternum, right, that center bone. So in order to find the sternum, we need the linea alba. So the linea alba is not technically a bone, but we're going to treat it as a bone so that we remember it whenever we go over the skeleton. The linea alba is a line of symmetry that cuts through the body vertically. It is fascia, it's connective tissue, but when it comes across the sternum, it kind of merges into bone. Okay, so the sternum, that center bone of the rib cage, that like necktie bone, is right along that linea alba. Connected to the sternum are the clavicles, your collarbones. Now the shape of the clavicles are kind of like the handlebars of a bicycle. Okay. And of course we have an archway for our ribs. Sometimes it can be like a Gothic arch and be kind of pointy. Other people, it looks more like robust and barrel shaped. It's going to depend upon the individual. So when you're drawing the body, I would look for this triangular shape and this inverse triangular shape, right? It's like we're having a split diamond, okay? The archway of the ribs and that triangle of the two hip bones on the iliac crest and the pubic arch on the bottom, okay? Okay, so neither a bone or a muscle, but we need to include it. Your navel, your belly button, is going to be roughly at the same height as the top of the pelvis, the iliac crest. So this will be our navel, and we'll need it later on. Okay, so I'm going to put some lines here just to represent the humerus, the bone of the upper arm, just so it's a little easier to tell what's going on with the first group of muscles we'll talk about. Okay, so moving on to the muscles, we're going to talk about chest muscles first. So the two that we'll learn are your pectoralis minor and your pectoralis major. The pectoralis minor is smaller and deeper. The pectoralis major is larger and more superficial. When we say superficial, we mean closer to the surface of the skin, something that you can easily see. Okay. The pectoralis minor, I'll go over here. is attached to, like underneath the bones of the shoulder, okay? We'll talk about the shoulder more specifically when we go into the muscles of the upper arm, but for right now, we'll just keep it simple. Okay, so there's going to be some like crossing of different muscle striations going on. So the pectoralis minor goes kind of down and out in this triangular way from underneath the end of the shoulder. Okay, I'll do it on the other side as well. So muscle striations going down. That's the pectoralis minor. The pectoralis major sits on top of the pectoralis minor, and the muscle fibers are kind of cross-laminated. If you're a carpenter, you'll know what that means. Or if you've ever been to Home Depot. Right. Okay, so very strong because of this kind of cross-lamination of muscle fibers. Pectoralis major filling out that chest shape, that pec shape. Like hooking onto the sternum. Okay, so that's what your pectoralis minor and major are doing. The next group of muscles we'll talk about are your rectus abdominis muscles. These are your abs, okay? So our linea alba helps us draw the abs because we already have that center line going on. Now, apart from the linea alba, there are other lines of fascia, especially in the abdominal muscles. So the outer fascia, the lines are called semilunar lines. I remember it by thinking of a crescent moon. Lunar, luna, moon, right? So they have these kind of crescent-like shapes, crescent-like lines, and the linea alba. So semilunar lines, linea alba. Now, abdominal muscles are very strange. They're not as symmetrical as this. It's very rare to see somebody that has very symmetrical abs. They're kind of all over the place, really. We're going to have a line of connective tissue horizontally cutting across the navel. And there's typically 4 pods of muscle above the navel, and you'll see the muscle striations going up and down. Sometimes it looks like there are 6 the closer you get to the archway of the ribs. It's an individual thing. And similarly, some people, it looks like they just have one big pod of muscle, but other people have a little bit of a separation in the muscle fibers towards the bottom, and it kind of looks like there's another horizontal stretch of fascia. So abs are very strange. Okay, so let's make that a little darker. We got that linea alba and those semilunar lines, this surfboard-like shape. Okay. Let's put some ribs on the rib cage just so we can kind of get an understanding of some of the shapes that are being made here. Okay. So the next muscle that we'll talk about, we already talked about for the back muscles, the flank or oblique. So your flank pad. Your flank pad is the part that sits on top of the iliac crest. Okay, so the flanks, the obliques, whatever you want to call them, they're going to kind of sit on top. with muscle striations going down, hooking into the iliac crest, right? They're going in to meet the bone. Remember, indentations on the surface of the skin can mean that the bones are actually protruding there, okay? So the skin goes in to meet the bone, and these are very important places to know when you're drawing. I'll ask you to sting where bone is closest to skin. This is what I'm talking about. So these muscle striations are coming in and they're like hooking into the iliac crest. Okay? So I'm going to kind of reshape this rib cage or just emphasize it a little bit so it's easy to see. Okay. You might see muscles that we talked about from the back a little bit from the front. Remember that large muscle that we talked about first with the back, the latissimus dorsi, right? The one that I said was kind of shaped like a manta ray. I don't know why. It just reminds me of one. That's how I remember the shape. You might see a sliver of it from the front. And if somebody outstretches their arm a little bit, you might be able to see the tiniest bit of the teres major. If you had X-ray vision, it would be that football shape in the back that we talked about.